Town of Ayer Zoning Board of Appeals, Wednesday, August 31st, 2022, 6 p.m. Remote participation meeting agenda. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, OML, public bodies otherwise governed by the OML are temporary relief from the requirements that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by joining Zoom meeting ID 857-9728-7177 or by calling 312-626-6799. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. Be at 6:01 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Somebody?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. All in
Ron
favor,
DeFilippo.
signify by saying aye. State your name.
Ron
Mike Gibbons,
DeFilippo, aye.
One day we'll get it right.
So,
Hey,
Sam, or Mr.
For
Chair,
what?
if you call the members' names, I think that will work easier.
yeah, I
Oh,
think you're
okay.
right. Ron
that's a
DeFilippo.
great idea.
Ron
Say again over. Yes.
DeFilippo.
Aye. Ron,
Mike
aye.
Gibbons.
Aye.
Jess.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Chair says aye. All right. First item on the, second item on the agenda is the affordable housing presentation by Affordable Housing Trust and Affordable Housing Committee. Janet, take it away.
All right, you got it. Sam and all the other members of the board, I really want to say thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. We've been working hard towards this. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I did do a PowerPoint presentation. All right, hold on. Tell me whether or not you guys can see it.
Yep.
All right, again, I do appreciate you all going ahead and inviting us to do this. Wanted to first, talk to you guys a little bit about when people talk about affordable housing, sometimes they get a little bit scared. All right, because, well, first of all, there's like two types of affordable. One is we call like a small A, and the other one is a large A. When you have a large A affordable, that's subsidized. That means it can be controlled. It's permanent. It has deed restrictions. It has rules and guidelines that it's got to go by. When you have a small A, all right, it's private. It's going to be less permanent. It's going to be market driven, and we've got really no control over it. We all know pretty much the small A would be something like Devon's Crest. Large A would be something of the Air Affordable Housing, Air Housing Authority. We're going to be bouncing words like, workforce housing, inclusionary housing, a local initiative, and friendly 40Bs. Again, just to remind everybody, 40B is just the Massachusetts law, and that's the number is 40B to say that we've got to go ahead and have affordable housing within a community. And there's a subsidized housing inventory that we have to meet a 10% value. Right now, we're around 8. If we don't get to a 10%, that means that we're open for unfriendly 40B developers to come in. We're looking at and talking with NOAA, who is a friendly 40B, and they want to work with the town. So it would, be to our best interest. The other thing too that affordable housing has to go by is the area median income. They look at what people earn within the area, and then they'll break it down between a certain percentage amount. You've got an like Noah's looking at an 80%, 50%, and 30%. Now, when you see the numbers, I'll have a screen afterwards, but you're looking at, say, a 100% income in the area because we're part of the Boston metro area. You're almost looking at 98,000 for a single person as being the 100%. So if someone's earning under 49,000, that would be considered a 50% income. And when you start looking at some of the individuals who live and work in town, that's pretty much how much that they're earning. I was sort of amazed. Alan was able to give me some numbers. There are almost 38% of individuals who work in town qualify. So again, I said that we've been
38% of our population is less than 50,000.
no, that's hold on a second, 80%. I'll get to that. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'll have it on another slide.
Yeah,
But I'm not.
Didn't
Go
you
ahead.
isn't that what you just said?
I said that at least
38% of,
would qualify, okay, because they would be 80% or below.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's per person income
It's a per household.
per household. Thank you.
That's okay. All right. Now, again, when I say that we've been working towards looking at affordable housing, it all goes back to 2017 when we had the master plan. Master plan went ahead and said, we've got a wave coming from the east, and it's raising all the prices of the market here within Ayer and moving forward west. So with the master plan, we created the Affordable Housing Committee, and I'm very, very happy to say we've got a real good group that worked together, created the housing trust, created a new bylaw and such, so that we're able to go ahead and find ways to create, develop, sort of like save certain houses with funds that would either be coming in from Community Preservation Act or other type of funding sources. So with the creation of the Affordable Housing Trust, we've been able to, that trust has received CPA funds, and they distributed rental assistance last year to 5 families. Next year, because of town, authorization at the town meeting, and it was unanimous, they increased it so that they're able to take care of 10 families next year. And again, this is something that the town really wants to support, because I think, we all know that we're going to price ourselves out, and we really don't want that to happen. The other thing too is the Office of Economic and Community Development, Alan and Alicia. They've really been working hard on their grant requests and then the distributions of funds for rehabs. They've been able to work with many families within different areas within the town so that they can rehab their houses and keep them, as, places that they can continue living in. And then some of the other items that we've done are like the bylaw updates, the form-based code districts, as well as inclusionary zoning, and accessory apartments have been now allowed. Now, the inclusionary zoning, one good thing about that is if you've got someone who's coming in and building single-family houses, if they go and build 5 houses, say, and Ken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they have the opportunity to build the 6th house, but that 6th house has got to be affordable. If they don't want to do that, they can also go ahead and give monies to the Affordable Housing Trust. So we've been, like I say, trying to work together, coming up with, methods to make sure that we do our best to keep the large A affordable housing within Ayer. I'm going to go on to the next one, because we also too, on the housing, Affordable Housing Committee, we just developed the housing production plan, which goes ahead and gives us a good plan for the next 5 years of how we're going to continue this effort, as well as the community preservation has developed. It's just in the process of being signed off of the 5-year plan that states one of the highest priorities that the community had voiced to us through surveys, through public forums and such, is affordable housing. Try to go ahead and see if we can rein it in a little bit. The open space and rec plan does speak about how it can be shared, on how you have recreation, open space, as well as affordable housing, any other, like I say, combination of the two. There is a good way to make it work. One thing too that I want to emphasize is the team that I work with, the housing team, they have been able to go to different seminars. I mean, I know we had the pandemic, so a lot of these seminars were online. But when I go ahead and I talk about, Mass Housing Partnership, CHAPA, which stands for, bear with me, Citizens Housing and Planning Citizens Housing and Planning Association, they have the opportunity for us to take additional type of classes, seminars, so that we can find ways on how other communities have worked with developers and such. And the team has really been great because they've been going to these seminars, sometimes like once a month. And we've found out a lot, with regards to the small A, the large A, and how we can leverage monies through the Community Preservation Act and such. And the trust, as well as the committee, like I say, have been going to that and it's open. So if anybody else is interested in finding out more, we can go ahead and work with you to make sure that, we can educate the public, educate different departments, educate different, committees and such. Anybody got any questions up until now?
No, I think we got a good basis.
Okay, all right. I really don't have to cover this slide in certain ways because everybody knows affordable housing really is needed, all right? But I wanted to emphasize that, when you're looking at the real estate prices, sometimes it makes it difficult for existing residents to live here, as well as people who want to move into the community. I know that one member of the trust works in town and he really would love to live in the town, but he can't afford it. So it's things like that that just go through your mind, where there's got to be a way that we can go ahead and work within, with developers and such to come up with something. What I did is I tried looking at, like, say, some of the wages within the town. I mean, when you're looking at the minimum wage of $14.25, a lot of people go, okay, great. And you multiply that by, the 2,000 hours. It's like, okay, that's a good, wage. But that's not what you take home, first of all. So it really, can go ahead and make it difficult for that student who just graduated, from high school or college or whatever, to move out of the parents' home or whatever, of trying to find a way to start on their own. The other thing too I looked at is some of the town employees, what their wages are, because again, we're looking at, and I'm going to throw out the word workforce housing, because these are individuals who are working but don't make enough to go ahead and handle some of the housing within the community. You look at the town employees, we've got, and again, this is all the contracts that are out on the website. You've got your clerical, who earn a little bit over $16 an hour. And if you look at, like, say, our public service, where you look at the fire department or the police department, their hourly rate is under $30. Well, again, I know that that's a lot of money, but when you start looking at what really is, take home and such, how that still cuts in, like, again, if you look at $30 an hour, 2,000 hours a year, $60,000, that's still under the area median income for an 80%. Again, that's called workforce housing. So it's people that we want to keep within town, that we want to be able to support these type of endeavors, for affordable housing. This here, like I say, when we're looking at the rental rates, you've got, I've got the numbers. I'm trying to think where I threw them, that when you have the rents, you're looking at, for a fair market rent system of a 1-bedroom of approximately $1,900. The market rate itself is, again, we're in the Boston market, so you've got to take that with a grain of salt, is about $2,500. So, with that goes ahead and says, there's just no way, if you're looking at, $2,500 times 12, all right, it's, how are you going to afford, groceries on top of that? So again, with the affordable, it's more controlled. You have the ability to say, okay, great, this is what hold on a second, I got to get rid of the cap. This is what the state goes ahead and says what you can charge for rent. Now, when I mentioned about the statistics of Ayer, you look at approximately 39%, it's like 38 point something, of Ayer households, they can qualify for some sort of assistance in housing because they're under that 80% mark. I can share, like I say, I do have the breakdown of the area medium income, the listing that I received from Alicia. So when you're looking, again, at that income, anybody with a fixed income that's not increasing, even though from what I understand, Social Security is going to get a bump this year or next year. But seniors, we're being, priced out of living within the town. And one thing that when I was talking to some of these associations, about the idea, granted, it's happening throughout all of Massachusetts. So we're not alone, but some communities are doing something about it like us, and other communities aren't. If you keep just building single family houses, you're going to be pricing yourself out because, again, as we've been seeing, the prices have been continuing up, even though now they're sort of stabling and whatever, because everybody wants to see what the interest rate's doing. But the families that you really want to stay within the town won't be able to afford the town, so they're going to move out. So we're going to lose those resources. We want to keep those.
Excuse me, doesn't the market dictate whether you have a single family or multiple family housing? Doesn't the market drive that? It's not something we can control. If the realtor, well, not the realtor, if the developer has a piece of property and he wants to put a single family house on it, or if the property is big enough, would he put two or develop a two family? That's driven by business, profit, period. So
True.
whatever the market will bear is what they're going to do. So I don't know, there's nothing, I don't see how we would have any effect on that.
The effect that we can have on it is by supporting nonprofit developers such as NOAA to build something that is affordable.
Well, that's true. However, what they're proposing to build on the 40B is nothing like we have anywhere else in town. Everywhere else in town, they're building single family or duplexes. I mean, the ones over by the high schools, a couple of those are single family, a couple of them are duplexes. And I don't have any idea what they're doing out back, but I think they're going to end up with about 6 or 8 houses back over there.
I believe some of them are affordable. Ken, I
Right.
know. No. Okay. I know that some of the other discussions, they are going to be making, I believe discussions like, say, Stratton Hill, that a couple of them are going to be duplexes that are affordable because they're going to look like a single family house, and split it off into a duplex, but it'll only
The two of them right on the front of the street.
Yep.
Just as you get to it are duplexes. The other two are single family.
No. I understand that. I'm
Okay.
talking.
Not for Stratton Hill, that's for Panther Place.
Yeah, no, Panther Place are the separate duplexes and such.
And then
Yeah,
they're on
no.
the street.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Sam, that, yeah, it is market driven. However, if we don't work with companies like NOAA, that's all it's going to be.
True.
All right, hold on, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm going at is, if we continue just with the trend of single family housing, then that's all we're going to get. If we can go ahead and find partners to develop affordable housing and make it, so that it works for the town as well as the developer, as well as, you know, individuals within the town, then it's going to be a win-win. If,
Wouldn't they have to have,
I'm sorry,
if you look at the piece of property that they're building, they're proposing this 40B on, you look at that piece of property, if you put single family or even duplexes in there, the best you're gonna get is maybe 8 to 10 houses, 8 to 10 buildings. And what we've done is we're going forward with what, 160 apartments or
106.
Comment.
106 apartments. So, yeah, that would be a substantial change. But I don't see where we have another piece of property in town where we could even compete with that. Unless you guys know something, I don't know. Where would
Mr.
we
Chair,
go?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Hold on, Sam.
Yeah,
Ken has got his hand up.
yeah, Ken.
is my screen frozen at all? I'm not sure.
No, you're
You're
good.
good.
Okay. I'd like to just make the potential, like, the most important thing to me about tonight was to show you that as a group, we came together to support this project. One of the disappointments that has happened as we formed these affordable housing committees and affordable housing trusts in the last few years is we studied and worked and tried to develop procedures and bylaws and changes that would support affordable housing. But as Mr. Goodwin mentioned, we haven't seen any results of that work. In other words, there's been no developer that has come into town and worked outside of the basically the single family home and a 2-family home concept. So despite the fact that the committees were formed and despite the fact they put in many hours and did training, as Janet said, and I went through that with the other committee members, we were unable to see a project to land in town that we could support. So this is, to me, seems to be, as a committee member, the first project that we feel strongly to get behind. And the result of that is that we have an opportunity to hit many, many home runs at the same time. We have a chance to get over the 10%. We have a chance to get 106 units that potentially will be affordable to residents in the town, which we haven't had before. We don't know exactly how that's going to happen. And as you say, Mr. Goodwin, the market will treat the rest of the town, accordingly. But the efforts that we've tried to make and the changes that we've made in the things that we took to town meeting simply have not resulted in a developer coming into town until this friendly 40B came around. So that's kind of the thinking that I'm bringing to this meeting. And I thank Janet so much for her presentation. And on top of that, the fact that we haven't had anybody come into town, and despite the work, it's kind of disappointing. So I'm encouraging this committee to support the project based on the fact that we just haven't seen anyone come in. And I want to thank, the other thing to clarify, Mr. Goodwin, is that the 40B is allowed in any zone. As you know, they can bypass the zoning requirement for residential, industrial, or commercial. And this particular project happens to go across 3 of the zones. So we're limited on the residential side to apartments or complexes that typically would fall in a residential zone, yet the 40B overcomes that. So we're able to use a piece of land for residential use, which typically would not be residential use. Another benefit I think this developer has brought to the table. So I would encourage you to think positively about the development, and I appreciate the comments that I was able to make. And I just want to fall back on one. It is not single family homes. It's multifamily projects alone that qualify for the requirement that we have inclusionary zoning. So if a developer comes in with a multifamily project in town, every 5 units they build, the 6th unit has to fall within the state requirement for affordable housing.
Okay, I understand it, and I don't debate the necessity for the 40B and the housing that's going to go along with it. I don't have any qualms with that at all. I do support the project, but listening to the presentation, I'm wondering, okay, to my knowledge, there's 2 developers in town that are building multi houses.
No,
What's the other developer?
I don't know who the developer, I just know that there's one over by the high
Central Ave.
school, and then there's the one over by
I can clarify that.
it's over, where the hell is that? It's on
The pond,
110 headed toward,
Shaker Pond.
is that what it, yeah, okay.
So
there's-
there are three open space residential developments that have been approved by the planning board that are under construction right now.
Okay,
The one right along 2A, which is John Carroll Reserve, that's a cluster of single-family homes that are relatively close together.
yeah,
The project on the Shaker Mill Pond was the second project that came along under the new open space residential project. That developer, with a special permit granted by the planning board, is going to build 6 two-family homes, similar to what he built right on Shaker Drive now. There are, I think, 4 two-families that he built on Shaker Road. Those are the only 2 families, not multi-families, that are under construction. And the same thing, as you know, went to your board for Washington Street for two-family homes.
right,
The development in the back of those two-family homes off of Washington Street called Panther Place is a development of all single-family homes. And I can stress to the board, and I thank you for the time, that as these projects came to the planning board, we have very progressive thinking people on the planning board who in every case have asked the developers as they came into the projects, would they consider having a portion of their projects as multifamily or affordable or under the state guidelines. And what ended up happening was we asked them all, and we did get a developer, Aho, to build a 2 families because he was interested in that kind of work, and he's very successful at it. But the other developers basically came back and said, that's just not the business that we do. We either don't have the legal team, we don't have the subcontractor base, the ability to build. We like to build single family homes. That's what we do. So we're unable to dictate what they build. We're at the mercy of, as you said, Mr. Goodwin, to how they think and how the market is running. So this project is totally unique in its difference between what we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years.
true.
So I thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Janet.
No, no.
We went off the rails. I'm sorry.
And that's all right. I mean, I'd rather go ahead and have all this cleared up because again, I know that it's market driven, but we want to try to do the best that we can with what's being presented to us and support it. So that's why, I just wanted to go ahead and emphasize this. One thing that you did mention, Sam, is, with regards to, affordable housing and 40Bs. The next slide, if I can get to the next slide, which the cat has done something. Hold on. Oh, let me hit backspace. Okay, we do have affordable housing here within Ayer. We do have some 40Bs. If we look at Autumn Ridge, as well as the Willows, there are several of the units there that are 40Bs. We do have the Fletcher Nutting Building as affordable housing that the CPA funds were used to get those apartments up there. And then also, with the Air Housing Authority, you've got the Pleasant Street School, Pond Street, as well as Isaac Lane. Those are all, in that affordable range. These are, again, the capital A's. These are subsidized. These are part of our subsidized housing inventory, which is that 10% goal that we want to get at. All right, and let's see if this will go ahead. So again, the support and the success, if we can get to we've got the 106 that are being offered by NOAA, where all 100% of them are affordable. We're going to be, looking at that 10% for the subsidized housing inventory, the SHI, which if we can get to that, then that will go ahead and allow us a lot more leverage so that a unfriendly 40B can't come in, like Ken was talking about, of just taking any type of property and making a 40B and not even looking at, some of the zoning requirements. And also too, when we're at that 10%, the Office of Economic and Community Development can apply for even additional grants. And I think even the town themselves can apply for additional grants. So again, supporting NOAA as the friendly 40B gives us a role within the project so that we're able to keep the resources within the town. And when, again, I work with, so many good coworkers that really want to live in town, but they can't. But I know that they would be able to offer a lot more to the town if they could be residents here, but they've got to move out somewhere else. So, I wrote down, families, workforce, taxes, and also two customers for downtown.
What
Yeah.
constitutes a percentage of subsidized, back a slide up.
Yep.
All right. 10% subsidized housing inventory. Now, what is 1% subsidized housing? How many is it? Does it go by structures? Does it go by bedrooms? What is it? What constitutes a percentage of subsidized housing? I know it's a ratio, but of what?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and, let me just give you my little,
Okay,
all right, and then I'll probably ask Alicia. Subsidized housing means that it's a capital A, large A, affordable, which means it's
Okay.
subsidized somehow or another. And when you look at the housing within your area, you've got to have at least a 10% of that area as being some sort of subsidized. It receives, again, there's either, like a deed restriction, or it's under the control of the housing authority, or something like that. Alicia, can you help out with that, please?
Sure. So they take, right now, they're still working with the 2010 census, but they count how many units of housing are in the town.
what's a
It is-
unit?
A unit can be an apartment or it can be a house, but it's a unit of housing. So if it's an apartment building and has 3 units, that counts as 3.
Okay,
Okay, so from the 2010 census, it's something, it's about 3,220 units of housing in this town of Ayer. And what they're looking for is 10% of that number. Soon, hopefully, we'll be at the 2020 census, and then we'll have a lot more housing because we've built a lot of housing. And so our number can even go down from there. We were at 8.9 and we're now down in the 7.6 because we're losing units that were subsidized or deed restricted for only 15 years. Now, one of the reasons the governor has really been pushing, and the whole 40B law was put together, was because the state is very concerned about losing their workforce. Workforce housing can be, or workforce is anything between 60 and 120 of the AMI, the area median income. So that can be, somebody who's making, so 80%, one person at 80% of the area median income. That means the average, the median between all families, and it's a 1-person household, would be 78,300. So, but that's really our workforce. Our workforce ranges from here. This is the sheet on this, and they update this every year. So a 2-person family, and it's considered moderate income or workforce. So that's, and because housing has become so expensive in the state, people are leaving the state. And that's not good for our economy or anything. It's not good for our town. We have one of the biggest manufacturing bases, and Alan can speak about this. Most of our jobs are in manufacturing, which is very rare in a small town like this. But a lot of those manufacturing towns actually put people at the 50% AMI, or area median income. So what we're trying to do is make it so that they can live in town and work in our manufacturing jobs, because that helps the economy of the town. That keeps our tax rate low. I'm going to let Alan talk about that if we have the time.
is he here?
Yep, he's on a phone line.
If he starts talking, you give him 3 minutes.
I will.
25 words or less. We know how Alan is, okay?
So
25 words or less.
So, well, it is those numbers of that Janet gave back a little bit further, that 39% of our town actually qualifies in that 80% or below. Now, there's one other thing I want to point out. So we saw 2 other 40B developments on there. We saw the Willows and we saw Autumn Ridge. Those were done by for-profit developers, and we got 20% of the units as affordable.
I remember the
Um,
Willows. I was on the board. I just went on the board when that was underway.
Okay.
Yes.
So what we get with a nonprofit is they're building a rental building, development, and they're making 100% of them affordable, which gives us a lot more units. It's a lot more bang for our buck, and that's why we're looking to work with a nonprofit developer to really bring in units that can house a number of people in this group. Is there any questions?
No.
Yes.
Yes?
Me?
I mean,
Yes.
Sam Jess has got it.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, one question I have, and I like this project, but how does meeting the 10% goal, how does that enable a town to protect itself against an unfriendly 40B?
If
you
we
got-
have 10%, the zoning board of appeals can refuse to look at the application for a 40B.
That's the law?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Just, Mr. Chair, just for a moment. Alicia, what's the correct term that they use for that?
Safe
exclusion?
harbor, I think it is.
Safe
Yes,
harbor.
it is.
Yeah.
It keeps the town
Okay.
safe harbor, Mr. Chair.
But the mechanism is the ZBA can refuse to hear it, right?
Right. But
Okay.
there's an, can I comment on one aspect of that?
Please.
There's a little bit of another twist to it. If in fact the town is over that percentage, the 10%, it entices more friendlies than the controversial non-friendly. So there is in fact a chance that we could get another friendly, even though we're over the 10%, because we would view it as friendly rather than not friendly. And it would be trying, in other words, another developer could come in, or Noah could come in with another project. We would still potentially agree to, endorse that project if it were in fact a friendly. But it gives the town an opportunity to turn down under the safe harbor provision an unfriendly, which may not be in the best interest of what the board feels is best for the town. Does not discourage friendlies, is what I'm getting at.
Thank you.
Sam, if I could.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. So, I mean, personally, I appreciate this presentation. I think, hearing another, the trust support of this project will definitely be helpful. My only question is the 106 units that we're talking about, how far above that 10% does that take us? Are we going to be at 10.009 or are we looking at 11 or 12? Is it a significant increase that,
I don't think we'll know until they use the correct census. Right now, she said they're running.
well, and so that was leading me into my next question,
Yeah.
which is this based solely on 2010? Because God knows how much development we've had since 2010.
Quite a
I-
bit. Yeah.
I think we're going to actually possibly be short 7 units, but we'd have other projects that are bringing in some units. So hopefully we'll be able to, get over that. And until we get the new census numbers, then it could, it should get us at someplace between 9.5 and 10.3 something. So we might have to really, we will have to continue to work. One of this is this 40B is in perpetuity. It's not one that in 15 years it's going to expire.
Right.
That's one of the important factors. It's also one that has 16 units at 30% low to moderate, or the AMI rate. So 16 units will actually have vouchers where the federal government will help subsidize those units. It will then have, I don't know how many units after that was going to be 50%, and the rest were going to be 70 or 80% AMI. So it's going to really be structured for a number of different income levels. And the interesting thing is, just really quickly, I don't want to go on too long. We have the housing rehab where we actually help people who are low to moderate income put roofs and furnaces, fix a roof. And we have that used very heavily by our elderly population who are on fixed income. But I think you'd be surprised how many people in town even own houses or are renting that have very low incomes. It's nothing for me to have somebody walk into my office and say they have $20,000 a year. That's it.
Wow.
And so, and these are citizens, some of them own houses, and it's just, this is one of our ways to keep our diverse population.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. My only other question is how often do we recalculate that subsidized housing inventory number? Is it done every 10 years in line with the census, or is it done annually?
It's done every 2 years.
Okay, so this is my point being, while I do appreciate this project that we have in front of us, this is not a, we're not going to hit safe harbor and then just be done, because again, development in town over the last few years has crept up, and like Sam kind of alluded to, we're building singles and twos. Our inventory is going to continue to rise, and
Yeah.
we're going to have to do something to create more affordable housing. So
Yep.
One of the things that the town can think about is expanding their inclusionary housing bylaw, which means that if a developer comes in and builds more than 5 units, meaning house, rental, anything, that they are required to make one of them affordable. And when we do that in that inclusionary zoning bylaw, we then give them 2 more units that they can build on, so they get extra units for a parcel if it's reasonably can hold 7 units. So it actually works out to be, for every 7 units, they owe the town 1 affordable. And affordable means if it's a private developer, it's just going to be a deed restricted at 80%. So they could, that if it's a duplex or something like that, they have to sell it at 80%. They still can sell it for whatever the going rate is, whatever the affordable rate is, which right now is about 235,000. So they have to build a unit, in that development, whether it's, and what a number of developers do is they build a duplex that looks like a single family house if they're building single family houses, but there's one front door and then you go in and there's two units in there. And that's how they provide the 2 units of affordable, and they just sell, they're deed restricted, but they sell. And right now they're selling for about 235,000.
Okay. Thank you. Janet, you want to pick it up again?
No, that's okay. No problem. Let me go ahead and hold on a second. Let's see if, here we go. I mean, that's really the last slide, is let's help,
Okay.
know and meet the needs of the community. Now, and I say in the future, because as Ken and Alicia alluded to, hopefully we can go ahead and have more friendly, 40B, more friendly developers, come in and create some additional housing with whatever spots of land that we may have left over for developing versus, like I say, open space.
You're absolutely right. We're running out of real estate.
Right, correct. And one thing that I do want to bring up, when Alicia was talking about how many individuals, again, Alan was able to generate from the American Community, ACS, American Community Survey, some sort of census numbers back in 2019. We've got approximately 5% of individuals within town that earn less than $10,000. And again, when you're looking at the approximately 39%, that are earning under 75,000, that goes ahead and tells you on how they are eligible, for some sort of housing. So that's really what I wanted to go ahead and make sure you knew what the committee and the trust have been working towards, trying to go ahead and work. We still have a lot of work. I know that Alicia wants the committee to start looking at maybe some other items within the bylaw. So we do have our work cut out for us. And with that, if there's any other questions, ask them. If not, I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Ron, go ahead, buddy.
Yes. All right. A few things. All right. These incomes that we've been bantering about here, is that I don't know, all I can think about is taxes. So is this gross income we're talking about?
Yes.
All right, so when you say 50%, so the salaries you stated were $50,000, that's for 50% of the income in this town is under $50,000 per individual, something like that. So that's the gross income you're saying,
It's gross household income.
gross household income. Okay.
So if there's two adults in the house earning income, that's combined.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Ron, do you want me to bring that form back up, that sheet?
No, that's all right. That's all right. So all these things where we've seen income has been gross income. That's all they have to know. This, from the get-go, this has just bothered me, and this is just personal. I know you seem to have settled on this because it seems to check all the blocks, and it's just hard to swallow because everybody, this is completely rental, and one of these, not owner occupied, and this is disturbing. We all know that, we had a house in our neighborhood. It's now not owner occupied, and it shows it. Again, I can understand how this hits that 10% and how it's very desirable. The other thing, when you say, and another thing to make me feel comfortable or to understand this a little bit more, you bring up this warning about an unfriendly developer. Now you're saying that they can just take any land, whether it's declared open space or and just come in and say, this is what we're going to develop. That's the way it is, and we have no control over it. I'm just
No, Ron, no.
Yeah,
What-
they can't
They
take it.
can't-
I didn't think so.
No, they can't do that. When we're talking about a developer, that's the person that's coming into town, buys a piece of property and goes to develop it. Now, in this instance, is 40B, we're looking at the 40B regulation. Now, somebody there going to correct me if I'm wrong, but the 40B regulation overrides whatever we have in town other than conservation, not conservation. It is conservation, right? Yeah, okay. It overrides everything. Now, somebody who comes in with an unfriendly 40B can tell us to go pound sand. They're going to build it any way they want to, and we have to live with it.
Not exactly that, but they still have to go before your board, and they still have to comply with, heights, but they overcome zoning requirements pretty much. They
Yes,
overcome zoning requirements.
they pretty much are.
Well, isn't that true with the friendly development as well? They get zoning.
The friendly
they get
development is
zoning,
working. The friendly development is working with it, so it's a given. It's going to be, as we go through this process, they want to build this. It's going to be a nonprofit, so we have things they want and they have things that we want. So it's going to be a give and take throughout this process.
Sure.
And we have, I'll give you an example, these hookup fees. You're looking at $500,000 worth of hookup fees for sewer and water. So this is a
They
negotiation.
balked at that.
All right, and so, it's gonna go a couple different ways. Well, if we give up some of this, you're gonna give us that, so on and so forth. But it's a friendly atmosphere. It's not an adversarial, which would be an unfriendly.
So the benefit, the purported benefit of this is that we know what they're going to do. We know where they're going to develop. They've already, and it protects bad developments and, in any area where somebody purchased land.
That's kind of a broad stroke, but sort of.
I know, and I'm trying to see why I'm trying to sell myself on going from, in the past, we've had these part, we've been talking about these things that are part affordable and the rest are market rate. And it makes a nice community. And I'm just a little worried, that this is all rental. And we've never had anything like this. So I'm trying to get a degree of comfort and understanding why this is the way to go. And I understand yes.
This property will be owned and operated by a management company. It's not like you mentioned earlier that the property owner is not going to live there. That's sort of a misnomer. This is going to be under a property manager, and they still have to run it as a business. I mean, it's a business. It's that simple. So don't say that the owner's not going to, the owner's not going to live there. That's true. But there is representatives on site that's going to take care of this property.
Could I also say something?
Yes.
It's that in our current economic climate, we do need to have rental properties available. Housing prices have shot up so much. There are so many people that can't afford to buy homes now. And I think this is a good answer to maintaining a workforce, maintaining people for all sorts of levels of jobs in the area that can't afford that hefty down payment and mortgage payment and bank approval process. Having that sort of mixed housing inventory to me seems like the right thing to do in today's world.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ken.
just to go back to Mr. DeFilippo for just a moment on the question of the difference. This same property, I'll just give you an example of a standard 40B, which would not require any more than, I believe it's 20 or 25% of the units to be affordable. So they could come to this particular piece of property and build the same amount of apartments, yet we'd only get 20 of those apartments or 22 or some ratio under the affordable concept. So you'd still have an apartment building, you'd still have a market rate that's above the average most likely, and only 20% of the units would be in the affordable range. So a standard 40B is only required by state law to have, I think is it 20%, Alicia? I'm pretty sure it's 20, not 25.
20. It's
And
20.
so that's one of the big differences between a friendly and a non-friendly. So they could come into a development, into a piece of land, overcome density by building a lot of units, squeezing them in, and they only required to give 20% under state law to be affordable. This particular project is quite different than that, as we know, because all of them are going to be affordable and it's a nonprofit. So there's a big difference there in the relationship. But to get to the general tone of the town, and I think Mike Gibbons' comment about the 10% is really important. Thank you, Mike, for that. I'm a believer in development because I did that. I worked for developers and whatnot. There's kind of a standard that if a project comes into town like this and it's successful, there's a chance we could get more projects like it. I'm of that mind. Maybe no one might agree with me on that, but there's kind of a process in development that a successful project brings more success behind it. So we may have a chance to get more projects that, again, are more affordable units and get up above the 10%. So I hope that explanation. They overcome zoning, they can overcome height, they can overcome density by going to a 40B. Cannot overcome the Wetlands Protection Act. That's impossible. And an example of how this could be friendly, and we should see it in the process, Mr. Chair, is that, for instance, we have stormwater regulations in town. We'd like to see them, work within our stormwater regulations. There'll be a requirement for them to maintain the stormwater systems under state law and under our local bylaws. But those, working with utilities, working with every board in town to try to make a good, sensible project and not just take it for what. We actually saw a project come to the planning board for the same piece of land, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. A gentleman from Littleton came in and he was looking at 4 rectangular square buildings, 4 blocks. I mean, really ugly square buildings. I actually told him at the meeting, might be the worst proposal I'd ever seen. And he pulled it out. So we're looking at a project now that's got, a multifaceted, good looking buildings to it. And I think your board is doing a great job, and as a friendly, we should be able to, encourage them to do the right screening on the project, do the right landscaping on the project, do the right stormwater control on the project and all the other stuff. So I think I've said enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions for Janet or her committee? Ron, more? No?
No, I think that's it. Kind of gets a little of the anxiety about this thing over with.
John?
Thank you.
Sure.
So I was just a little confused when they talked about the other 40Bs in town. And big A and small a, big A is subsidized. And they showed us some of these properties in town that exist under 40B that are subsidized, but we didn't go through this process. It was granted by the planning board.
No, went through the ZBA.
Willows went through the ZBA. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they have to.
That was before most everybody on the board here now.
Okay,
And
so
this is
all the subsidized 40Bs went before the ZBA.
Yes, Carly?
So those Willows actually predates all of us. That was like early 2000s. They made some modifications that came to you when you were on the board, but it was well built, permitted.
Right, that's right. They were talking about the water pond or the retention or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Had
so
came up during that, yes.
I think what John is getting to is what is the difference between, like an inclusionary housing unit versus a 40B. So you could, John, have a new development come into town with 10 houses in it, and 2 of them are going to be affordable. That process, we already have zoning to allow for that. So you wouldn't need to do a traditional 40B route. We haven't had a 40B project like this
Right.
come through zoning for probably almost 15 to 20 years. But we are able to work with homeowners or property owners and within our local zoning to zone here and there units where we can get them to add to
Okay.
our 10%.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
No, I beg to differ. I was here for the Willows from its inception. But isn't that the only one that really was the 40B that had to come before the board? I don't recall any others. I must have been asleep or something. And then I don't recall this. This is a big process. And I remember that with the Willows. I don't remember anything like that since then.
No, because it's.
Am I right? Just to go ahead.
You
So,
are correct, but we've had an
Okay.
inclusionary zoning bylaw where we can get 1 or 2 units in, and they're still, they still follow the state
Yes.
regulations. So you wouldn't necessarily.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Okay. I got that all straightened out. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, any questions?
nope, I'm fine.
Mike?
I'm good. Thank you.
We're good. We're good, Janet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much. We do appreciate, like this opportunity and such. I know that Noah's going to be coming forth to on September 7th for a public hearing for the CPC, for Community Preservation Committee, with regards to their request. And
Who?
there will be the Community Preservation Committee.
Oh,
Noah is
okay,
coming.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, all right, to look for, because again, with it being affordable housing, that's one of the categories. So
Right.
there will be additional questions. Again, it will be a public hearing on the 7th. So with that, again, there'll be additional questions, being ironed out. So with that, we invite you to join.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. This being said, the next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing. Application for a comprehensive permit, MGL 40B, section 20 to 23, Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, Inc., 65 Fitchburg Road, filed June 24th, 2022. We need to talk about the proposals we got back. Carly, any update?
Yeah, so I wanted to update the board, and I know Stephanie and Phil are here from NOAA. I have Dan, DPW director, on the call. So we received one proposal from Green International that you have all seen. We had sent that over to NOAA to review. NOAA had, so how this process works for those that are unfamiliar, the town will receive funds from NOAA, and then we will receive invoices from Green International. The town will pay the invoices from the money received by NOAA. Basically, we're holding the funds in like an escrow account. We're
Okay.
paying these bills as the peer review goes through the process. So NOAA had expressed some concerns on the cost of the proposal, which was about $30,000. So what we've done since then is both myself and DPW Director Van Skalkwyk, we've talked to Green International. We've asked them to look through their proposal and see if we can refine anything. Also, Dan had looked through it for me, you know, extra set of eyes again. Alicia Allen and myself all went through it again to see if there's anything that we felt comfortable maybe shaving out of the scope to reduce the overall cost. So just this afternoon, and this is why it hasn't been sent to you, but I have spoken with Green International. They had sent over some ideas of maybe what they could shave out of the review to bring down the cost. I don't know that I'm comfortable with all of the options because, you know, we put this RFP out based on what we'd like to see for review. So they came up with some stuff that they could maybe remove, or when the project does go to Conservation Commission, you know, under the Wetlands Protection Act, they're going to peer review it as well. So I don't know that we need to peer review and conservation peer review the same stuff. You know, if it happens within the Conservation Commission, you know, does the committee feel or the board feel comfortable just having it reviewed there? It will happen, but we're looking, you know, kind of to see what we can reduce. And I can, Stephanie from NOAA can certainly speak to, you know, her concerns with the cost, Stephanie, if you're around.
Well, I'm kind of at a quandary here because it seems to me that we're sending out a proposal for peer review because we are trying to hire experts to look at the proposals because we as a group don't do this type of work, so it's out of our league. Now, if we've sent out proposals for someone to look at this, the water or the architecture or whatever the case may be, I don't feel comfortable cutting things out of it because we don't know what we're not looking at or what we are looking at. So the fact of the matter is, if we've asked to look at certain items, I think they need to stay there. That's my opinion, and you can ask the rest of the board the same question. I suspect you might probably get the same answers. So shaving things out of it, you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes, and I think that's kind of foolish.
This is a $30 million project. We're talking 0.1%.
I understand that. Yeah, 30,000, really?
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I completely agree.
No, this doesn't make sense.
So Stephanie is online if she wants to speak to that.
Please.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. When we received the proposal from Green International last week, we took a look at it, and Mr. Gibbons, I do understand your point that it's an expensive project if you're looking at things just what a percentage is. However, you know, truthfully, I anticipated seeing a proposal coming in somewhere around 18 to 20 is what I thought it would be. And there were just some concerns that NOAA had because, you know this all too well, but NOAA is a nonprofit and it's coming in to create a 100% affordable housing project. And certain of the, and, you know, obviously when Green Environmental is setting out its proposal, it's taking, you know, taking a look at what the town had asked it to weigh in on. And it was a pretty comprehensive scope that the town put out. And so I think that Green International reacted to that, providing a very comprehensive scope of services. There are certain things that I just, You know, like, I don't want to hit line items. I'm not certain if that's gonna help the board at all, but for instance, wetlands and wildlife review. The only real wetlands on this project is towards the back. So if you look at the plans, there's no part of the development on it, but for the sewer line that's going to come through. So I think the wetlands issues they're pretty confined. The traffic proposal came in.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Jess.
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 I would just like to say, I mean, I can agree with you that there's very little, the encroachment into the buffer zone is not huge. But being on the Conservation Commission, I was hoping this Green International Review could also look at the potential impact of the sewer line crossing the intermittent stream in the wetlands, whether by trench or horizontal directional drilling. So if this study doesn't look at it, I'm pretty sure the commission itself would want that aspect looked at it. So it's either now or later.
Right, and forgive me, I wasn't suggesting that there were no
Right.
wetlands issues, but what I was saying is this isn't necessarily a technical wetland site, is what I was trying to ineloquently state. And then the other kind of consideration that boards always do, the general rule is that most boards send out at least some part of a 40B project for peer review. But if the board feels that the town boards, DPW or whoever, is able to review this and provide their comments, that's appropriate, because the local boards should be providing just written input to the ZBA. So if there's a sense that there are issues that locally the town is equipped to review it and provide their input to the ZBA, sometimes that, you know, obviates the need for a peer review as to that aspect. And so I don't mean to push any certain agenda, and you know, maybe you want your counsel Paul Haverty to kind of give his view on, you know, not all aspects of a project are necessarily peer reviewed, or not to a huge degree, because it may be that the town itself, the public works, the town engineer are weighing in on things that are useful, and that they feel confident to be able to review the preliminary civil and architectural plans that have been submitted for the project, and to provide useful comments for the board. The second part before I conclude here is just Noah's suggestion in our letter that whatever the board decides to do, if we could just take a tiered approach in terms of funding. As I stated in my letter of the 25th, Noah had proposed submitting an initial 15,000 so that it wouldn't delay any peer review, and then to refund. Carly got back in touch with me and indicated that perhaps something a little more such as 20,000 would be a better initial deposit. So Noah, as I said, already sent off a check for 15,000. They're issuing a second check for another 5 to get to that 20,000. So however the board falls on this, we don't want to delay the review process that the board feels needs to go forward, but we would just ask for consideration relative to giving a little breathing room for Noah to have to refund. And as Carly indicated, it will go into a 53G account, and then Green Environmental bills the town, and then that's paid for from the sources of that 53G escrow account. So,
Do you mind if I ask where you came up with a number of 18 to 20,000, what your projected thought would be?
pretty much experience on other projects.
During the pandemic, seems like prices have gone up for everything in the last few years with the impact.
Well, the other thing we have to look at, no matter how many, we sent out so many, and we got one proposal back. And you don't like it. Now, I don't know if you went through it line item by line item, and I don't know if your review, you look at it with a different perspective than we do. There's no question in my mind about that. You look at it from a developer standpoint. We look at it from a board standpoint. Well, we need to know about this. We need to know about that. So passing it off to our town engineer or the DPW doesn't seem like a good fit. the whole purpose behind the peer review is someone outside of the principality looking at it and saying, okay, this is right, this is not right, or you need to look at that. It's a third party. And that's what we were paying for. And you're suggesting that, okay, you're gonna put $20,000 down, and if we want to go further than that, it's all on our nickel. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. I
That's what
apologize.
you said. You
Sure.
wrote a check for 15, you added another check for 5 to put it in the pot so that would take care of green, and the town would do whatever it wanted for the rest. That's what I heard.
Tiered,
Miss-
it would come in later with the rest.
Who?
She said tiered, so meaning they would start with.
Oh,
an-
shared. Yeah, shared. So
Oh,
we're gonna come up with the other 10. Is
No.
that,
No,
Mr.
no.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I interject here?
somebody clear the air, please.
So this was actually my suggestion. For the record, Paul Haverty, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein. I'm representing the board in this matter as MHP technical consultants.
Yes, sir.
This was my suggestion. It's not at all uncommon that an applicant provide funding for the peer review account initially at a certain level, and then with an agreement to replenish once the fund dips below a certain level. So what I had suggested was 20,000 and then have it be replenished when it drops below 10,000. The applicant is requesting that it be 20,000 and have it be replenished when it drops below 5,000. Really, the only difference that it makes to the board is your comfort level with this applicant, and whether or not you presume that this will be immediately replenished once you reach that point. I have no reason to doubt that that would be the case. I have seen occasions where applicants have been slow to replenish. I don't think that there's necessarily any reason to believe that this applicant would do that. It slows the process down. It hurts the applicant more than it hurts the board. If you have to put a stop to the peer review process because they haven't paid their peer review fees. In going to the issue of the total amount, I very much agree with your points regarding the fact that overall it's not a substantial cost for this development. I do think that there is benefit to having an outside party reviewing things rather than town staff. I think that you can get, and I'm not sure that that's an issue for this project, but I know that you can get certain instances where town staff feels like they need to provide responses that are against a project rather than fully objective, or whether or not that there is just some sort of feeling within the town that they don't want a project to go forward. In those circumstances, it's always better to have an independent party advising the board. So I think that that's definitely something that the board should dig its heels in and say that we want this type of review from this outside peer review consultants. I do think that in any type of circumstance, boards should be trying to make sure that they are not wasting efforts and funds of applicants by having duplicative reviews. So to the extent that there's going to be a review by the Conservation Commission over certain issues, it's not necessary to have that review as part of the Board of Appeals process. My only concern on the wetlands would be if there are waivers of local wetlands requirements that are being requested, that's outside the scope of the Conservation Commission to review, and that's then left for the Board of Appeals. So I do think someone needs to take a look at that to see if there are waivers of local wetlands bylaws being requested, and if so, then maybe there does need to be, even if it's limited to those issues, there should be that sort of review as part of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jess, do you think the Wetlands Commission would or Conservation Commission would feel good going through this?
Yeah, I think, it seems where their positioning work is in the outer portion of the buffer zone, and it's in a limited impact there. Again, I think the main issue for us will likely be that intermittent stream crossing of the sewer line.
No, the question,
would be-
the question,
that's not a-
question,
Yeah, but that's not
Question-
a local waiver.
no, the question I asked, would the Conservation Commission feel comfortable doing the review of that
Oh.
part of the project versus a peer review?
Okay, yeah, I guess so.
You think so?
I think probably. I can
Because
check. I can't speak for the whole board though offhand, but probably.
When do you
And
meet-
Mr.
when do you
Chairman-
guys meet?
We meet next Thursday night. We also have a site walk this coming Saturday, so I could informally poll people.
Do that, let me know.
Okay,
And Mr. Chairman, I think I don't want to be misinterpreted. The Conservation Commission also has the rights to retain peer review consultants.
Yeah.
So my presumption would be that there would be a peer review as part of that process instead of this process.
correct.
I was not suggesting
Right.
that the review be left solely to the Conservation Commission.
I misunderstood. That's exactly what I thought you meant.
yeah, that's
Okay,
what I thought you.
apologize for that.
And Mr. Chair, if I could make a recommendation where Green International came back this afternoon and said we could remove the wetlands and wildlife entirely and put this under the Conservation Commission's review, which they will be doing. I could ask them to remove it from this proposal, knowing they're gonna do it with conservation, and see what that does to the bottom line of the proposal.
And the only thing I would just add though is if it comes out of this proposal, I don't know that a peer review that through conservation would be cheaper than that we would send out would wind up with a cheaper offer than what's here.
Right.
So,
Again, the board should try to avoid duplication of peer reviews.
Right.
So if the Conservation Commission peer review is going to cover the exact same material as
Sure, I get
peer
that,
review
yeah.
would be, then there's no need to do it twice.
I understand that, sure. Carly, they didn't break it down proportionally, did they? What it is for the conservation, what it is for the sewer and
Yeah,
water?
they did. It was on page 2. Wait, wetlands and
34,
wildlife review. It says, we will perform a review of the project for compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act
Yeah,
and local wetlands bylaw and evaluate potential impacts on wetlands and wildlife. We will perform one site visit to confirm delineation. So that was a $3,500 item in the proposal.
out of a
so-
$30,000 bid.
It was 3420. Yeah. So
Okay.
that would take it down to like 27,000.
All right. Dollars and dimes.
And then I just was wondering if Dan, our DPW director, Dan, I know you're on there, if you just wanted to weigh in on whether, from your perspective, you thought that if we just peer review it at Conservation Commission, like your thoughts, you're obviously better versed in this than I am.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, to Carly's question. Yeah, I think doing the peer review for the wetlands through the conservation process makes the most sense. They are the ones who deal with that all the time and who will be approving the permit. So when they get the peer review back, they have a good feeling for how they want to permit it. So I think pulling it out of the ZBA and moving it over to conservation's hands is the right thing to do. But like Mr. Haverty said, if there are some waivers that may be under the board's discretion, we should, keep the right to have a peer review here for any waivers if we have to do so. And then if I can just on a sort of another topic, add that right now we're short-staffed in DPW, so we really don't have much for a means to do a review of a project of this magnitude at this time if we wanted to do an internal review.
I expected that much.
Yeah.
See, even if you took the $3,400 out of there, you're still nowhere close to 18,000 or even 20.
But you're $3,400 less than where we started.
Again, you're not even close to the 20
Yeah.
or the 18.
I mean, that would, speaking with the team at town hall, that would be the only thing really that we would feel comfortable removing from this, knowing it's gonna get looked at by the conservation.
Well, it's not, we're not removing it, we're just relocating it. There's a big
Right.
difference.
Right.
So that leaves us into a sort of a stalemate, doesn't it?
I have a question.
Yes, Jess.
Yeah, also, and I'm not speaking for the rest of the commission, just for myself. I'm less concerned about the wetland delineation, et cetera, and just more concerned on that issue of the stream crossing for the sewer line. If this review was delayed until the project came before conservation, where in the time frame would that take place? Because there would have to be decisions, I don't know, design decisions made earlier, I presume, about that process. I'm not being clear, but I mean, would conservation's looking at, say, the stream crossing, be too late to do anything about changing those plans if we say came down one way or another on the trench versus directional drilling? Would we be included in the process early enough to make a difference in the design?
You'd have to be.
Right,
So that means that it wouldn't go forward until it got conservation approval.
right.
Right, but knowing we're under a timeline, I mean, I'm curious what the applicant feels about that, filing with the Conservation Commission sooner rather than later.
So we have not, or I have not spoken with our engineers yet in terms of when we think that our timing with the filing with the commission would go forward. But to somewhat pick up on the questions that have been asked, the project plans typically are they're preliminary plans. So a board's decision on them would say that, the plans are to be submitted as final plans, consistent with anything that's included within the decision. And then if there is a modification somehow that arises under the wetlands, the applicant would need to confirm that design change with the board to make certain, and the board can determine whether it's just an insubstantial change or if they want to have hearing on it, if it were after the fact.
Yeah,
You know,
and
if
my issue is just having some comfort level on, I know BSC group was, the fellow was talking about a trench, open trench to create that sewer crossing. And what a different method would be the horizontal directional drilling. And I think they each have different impacts, but that's a design choice. And I don't know what the difference in cost between the two, but it would seem that that would be important for the designers of the project to know sooner, so that that's more fixed. Okay, we're going to do the trench design, conservation's okay with it, or we're going to do the horizontal directional drilling, but that might be a substantial change if you went one way and conservation pushed back. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, I understand that. And I think though, there's somewhat of whether it's directional or whether it's trenched, may not impact though the overall
Okay.
that it's going to be, this many units, this many buildings, things like that. It's just how that happens.
Okay.
And there can be fluidity, if you will, in the board's decision that says that, the applicant has proposed this and it's, subject to receipt of, the wetlands order of conditions from the board, and recognizing that may change. So there can be that sort of fluidity, recognizing that if all of the reviews, because under 40B, you raise a good point though, that under 40B, sometimes these issues are interrelated and there's no requirement of what the order has to be in terms of presenting, a state wetlands notice of intent and the 40B. So, and it often is the case though, that applicants move forward seeking the 40B because they need to know if they really have a project before they spend money going for the Conservation Commission.
All right, so I think at this point, we're now going back and forth over $3,500.
Yep.
Jess, are you comfortable with Conscom doing this review?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's the same
So-
question I asked, Mike, and
you know,
it's not.
it's $3,500. Now we're talking 1/100%. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna go bananas here. You know,
We've wasted
I
a half
agree-
an hour
I
arguing
agree with
about
Paul.
$3,000. Yep.
right. I agree with Paul that, you know, we shouldn't parse back too much. Carly said town staff are not inclined to cut much more than, you know, when I say cut, I mean shift, because that's all we're proposing this. I also appreciate what Dan said. I do not think, I'm glad the town staff are here to support us and, you know, guide us through this process, you know, as best they can, but they're working for the town day to day. You know,
Right.
this is a peer review will focus on this project solely. And
Yes.
they have a million other things to do on top of, you know, the help they're going to give us through this process. So if $3,500 seems to placate this issue, I'm fine with it.
It won't.
I
That's
know,
the
but
point.
That's
You know,
that's my proposed solution.
But
We're
Mr.
going, we're according to what Ms. Kiefer said, she's looking at the 18-20 bracket.
Yeah, I'm not there. So,
I agree.
okay.
I
I'm
mean,
not, I'm not there either. I'm not there either because she based that number on previous projects, but they've never done a project this big. You know, I looked at the projects that I've seen them do, and there's nothing of that magnitude out there.
thank you, John.
So I would just suggest letting Stephanie speak to it. I don't think Noah's going to be unreasonable and say we have to get it to 18,000. I mean, they've been, you know, they've demonstrated that they'll work with the town on it. So my recommendation is that what we do is remove the wetland stuff from this proposal, get a new price, and we can move forward with getting this peer review going, knowing that some of this cost from this proposal will be shifted to the conservation. And, you know, they'll deal with it over there. So does
What
that sound-
what does Noah propose? I mean, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, like I
Well,
said earlier, we're stepping over dollars. It just doesn't make sense. What, other than the fact that they've offered to pay 20 grand, 18, she thinks it should be 18 to $20,000. Okay, it came back 30. Okay, we can shift 3 grand away and it's still 2650 or somewhere in that range. So what does Noah suggest? What do you suggest as an alternative, if anything?
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
again, thank you for your time this evening. And Noah was not asking of the board to make it 18 to 20, and I apologize if it was taken that way. What Noah had written, what I had written on behalf of Noah, was that we were just asking the board to take a look and to consider that it seemed a bit high. And then the second request was asking that the board allow us to submit the partial payment, and then as that funds get drawn down, to do a replenishment.
To the what point? To the point of the entire
Yeah.
30 or
Again,
26,000 or whatever it is?
Right, that's the board to determine what they want the peer review to be. We had just asked the board to consider. The reference that I made to 18 to 20 this evening, it was just asked what I thought it would come in at. And I was just stating, based on my experience, not Noah, but myself, on other projects that I've worked on that are, that I see that the issues are somewhat parallel, that I thought that the cost would come in lower. Noah, I said that as a response based on my experience. Noah was not asking the board to shape this down to 18 to 20. We simply raised the question because, as they say, if you don't ask, we'll never find out whether the board would consider looking at this proposal and whether or not there could be any reductions made to it. And then the second part again was whether we could submit the partial payment at this time, it's put in the escrow, and then as additional peer review, as that gets drawn down, it needs to be replenished, then do it at that time.
As I understand our board's position, we don't have a problem moving the wetlands portion to the Wetlands Conservation Commission. So it's not piggybacked, or it's not done twice.
Right.
But as
And we
far as,
appreciate,
but as far as I believe the rest of us are concerned, the peer review stands as we've asked for. I think that's pretty much the way I'm reading this group.
That's true. Except, but the second part of the question is the payment process.
That's, well, the way I understand it, John, if we're saying this is the peer review we want, we've looked at it, we've agreed to this part, then it's up to NOAA to decide whether they're going to fund it or not, unless I'm wrong. Yes, Carly?
So what the issue is a tiered approach. So they're going to give us $20,000 this week, and then we
Yep.
will allow them to draw that down. And once it hits either 5,000 or 10,000, then we ask them to replenish. There is no sense, I have none of the town staff. I think Paul just said the same thing. We don't have a fear that they're not going to replenish it. So it's an administrative billing matter, and that we can certainly handle in my office. So what I would, and if there were some reason or there was an issue with getting that fund back above $5,000, certainly I would communicate that to the zoning board. So I'm comfortable with getting the $20,000 so we can start this. And then as we go through the peer review process and we need to replenish funds, then we work that out later with NOAA.
Does Green do proportional billing, partial billing? I mean,
Yeah, it's as we go through the process. So they'll do the traffic review first, send us a bill for that.
okay, all
Right. We don't owe them the lump sum upfront at all. No.
Okay, I didn't know if it was half at the beginning and half at the end,
No, it'll
and
be,
down or something. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
because we can't pay for anything ahead of time, the town. We have to wait till the services are rendered.
We're not gonna pay for it anyway.
Well, right, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Carly, do you need a motion to that effect to
But-
authorize you to?
So how about, and I'll defer to Paul, but I think if we just got a motion from the board to remove the wetlands issue,
Relocate it.
yeah,
Okay,
to remove it from this proposal, and with the understanding that conservation will be doing a peer review on it.
and that, I just make sure Noah understands that that would mean a different bidding process and a different amount of
Price.
money that would be owed for that.
Does Noah understand that?
yes, sorry, I was nodding my head in the affirmative.
Couldn't hear you. All right, Mike, make a motion?
Well, can we just have Paul weigh in on that first?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Callie, I think that it was exactly correct.
Okay. All right, then we can go for it.
All right, I make well, before I do make a motion. Well, you haven't heard from Ron, and I actually really want to hear. I'm being sincere. I really want to hear what he says about this. He's the only one who's done a 40B project, and I know
Yep.
we've labored on this, but I really do want to hear what he thinks about it.
You're on, Ron.
Well, take it from someone who's worked for the government for many years and seen huge amounts of money wasted on stupid studies. I certainly support the idea that we should not have any duplication here. It's unnecessary. If we determine it's unnecessary, then let's go for the money we're asking for. Carly did make some comments that I think she had something in mind, that there were certain things that could have been reduced. I don't know. Maybe this isn't the right forum to do that in front of the contractor or in front of the applicant, but I don't know. I agree with this is not an unreasonable amount. Certainly, if there's any, if there's some duplication in other areas that or unnecessary studies that we might have overscoped it, then fine, let's we could go over that. But as it is, from what I've seen, it seemed to be properly scoped. But that's all.
I agree.
All right, so then with that said, I make a motion to authorize the assistant town manager to remove the wetlands pricing from this proposal with the understanding that it will be shifted to the Conservation Commission and to receive a new price for this proposal.
And agree to the payment schedule
Well, that's
as
administrative.
a separate?
Yeah.
Okay,
You want to second it?
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Mike,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ron,
Aye.
Jess,
I,
chair says aye.
Okay, so procedurally, what I'll do is I'll work with, Dan and I will work with Green International tomorrow. We'll get a new kind of bottom line number on this, and then we will contract for services because we really need to get this going.
Yep.
Yes. So we've gotten the traffic study. Do we have any others?
No, not yet.
Okay. Do we have a timeline on the others?
I would think Stephanie could speak to that.
I'm sorry, what are you,
Timeline on the studies that we've asked for. We have the traffic, but we don't have anything else.
Well, we have the plans, which include the stormwater. We have the stormwater report. We have the traffic. The civil engineering is in the original plans that they submitted. So
right,
Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not waiting on any other studies, correct?
no, the applicant has submitted
Yeah.
what is going to be peer reviewed.
Okay, thank you.
If I may make a suggestion though, if it helps everyone moving forward in terms of, I think Carly was suggesting that Green would probably do the traffic first. So I know that by the time you end this meeting this evening, you're going to set the next hearing. And so if we had that focused on which specific aspects that the board wants to have the peer reviewer do their part, and so to focus that hearing on those issues.
Right, so I would think we'll get started on the traffic first. And our next meeting is September 21st. So, I mean, I will talk with Green tomorrow and see, is that realistic to turn it around in 3 weeks? And they'll attend the meeting and go over their findings. If for some reason they say there's no way that's possible, then we'll shift to something that we will have something focused for the 21st meeting. And I will, once I talk to Green, I will let everyone know what that is. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Good.
I'm glad you said that. I had the wrong day marked down in September. I had the 14th.
Oh, third Wednesday.
I know.
So what we
Okay.
need now is just a motion to continue this public hearing until September 21st, 6 PM on Zoom.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. John,
John, aye.
Yes,
I,
Ron,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
chair says aye. Motion carries. All right, that being said, is there anything else we need to talk about? Or are we going to adjourn?
Well, we are clear to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn. All in
Second
favor
that.
signify by saying bye. John,
Oh,
bye.
Bye.
Ron,
Bye-bye. Aye.
chair says
Bye.
bye. Thank you all.